You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast, and on this episode, we're discussing weapons, sinners, and hard eyes. Here we go. Welcome back to the Fan2Fan Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Bernie Gonzalez. With me, as always, fellow co-host Pete Charbonneau. And on this episode, we have two special guests joining us as well, returning guests, Graham and Jon. And we're talking about 2025 horror movies. But specifically, we're going to dive headfirst into the blood-soaked brilliance of 2025's original horror hits. We're talking Weapons, Sinners, and Hard Eyes. Three movies that aren't sequels, they're not remakes, they're not legacy IP. They're bold new stories that provide original horror that definitely is still alive and kicking and slashing. It feels like horror again in 2025, ruling the box office, and we don't think that's by accident. Maybe it's the state of the world right now, anxiety, frustration, people are looking for something. Horror has always mirrored society's fears, and I think 2025's lineup kind of taps into that in some really creative and maybe unsettling ways. And what's fascinating about these three films, and I guess when you compare them, again, despite smaller budgets compared to superhero or franchise tentpoles, those big summer movies that are always made to pull in big audiences because they have to rationalize their budget and their marketing campaign spend, horror has always thrived on limitations. So the creativity, the inventiveness shines.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. The budgets are not extravagant, and so you're able to be a little risky. I think it's one of the few theatrical avenues right now where you can be surprised. And I think that's it's sort of a shame, I think, that our theatrical landscape is kind of limited in that way to like big budget action, extravaganzas and then horror, and there's just not that much room for anything else.
You don't need a $200 million CGI spectacle to scare people. You need tension. You need atmosphere. You need a really good idea that sticks with you after the credits roll and that hopefully gets people to talk about it. And that's exactly why studios, filmmakers, I think, are taking risk again, because the genre rewards creativity and it has us talking about it.
Hey there. We heard tale of a party.
You did?
You wouldn't mind us coming in now, would you? We hungry as dogs.
Woof, woof.
You fellers must be the owners of this establishment.
That's right. And you are?
We just came here to play. Here, I'll show you. Let's go now.
Kill every last one of
you. Sinners. Directed by Ryan Coogler, inarguably, maybe the biggest horror release that had the biggest mass appeal. Ryan Coogler, who directed Black Panther. You have Michael B. Jordan that plays not just the lead role, but dual lead roles because he plays twins, vampires. Spoiler alert for people who maybe slept through the first hour of the movie. Feels like a little bit like From Dusk Till Dawn Redux. Certainly has a love of music. Jon, what'd you think of Sinners?
I've had some time to think about this. Upon first watch, I was a bit blown away, because I think the cultural piece and the music piece, I love both of those so much, and they're done so well. And the slow build and the drama is just excellent. Cast is amazing. The writing's amazing. The cinematography is just perfect. It's so well done. But the more I've thought about the movie, I felt like there was something missing with the horror aspect. The more I think about it, I feel like the movie was excellent and the horror was just good enough to not lose me. We're all horror fans here, and I just feel like I had seen the final act, whereas the rest of the movie I hadn't. And I just really appreciated everything else in the film. And when we got there, it's not that it felt lazy. I just felt like I had seen it before. I felt like if they could have hit with something just slightly different, slightly more offbeat toward the end, it really would have been more like a straight A for me.
Graham, is this something you saw in the theater or when it came out on video on demand or HBO Max?
Yeah, I watched it on HBO Max, and the hype around it had me really excited. If I'm watching a vampire movie, I'm immediately going to weigh it against some of my favorites. Fright Night, Lost Boys, Dusk Till Dawn. Is that fair? No. But also, is this movie going to bring me something I've never seen before? I think I clocked it. I want to say it was 54 minutes until there's even a vampire.
We got to move his body outside. Just for now.
Don't touch him. Nobody moved him.
You shot her, and she kept running like nothing happened. There's a Hank we dealing with, smoke. Or worse, we got to keep everybody inside.
I like the movie just two African-American gentlemen kicking ass against racist Southerners in a, Jim Crow era. That enough was a great plot point. And then it literally becomes From Dusk Till Dawn.
So overhyped from what you had heard and then from what you saw.
Overhyped and then just nothing new in terms of vampire. I did like the music element. That was very well done. But aside from that, didn't blow my mind. I actually, was severely disappointed.
I do think that there's a bit of an age difference with this movie. Like a lot of the people that I was listening to hype it up, I don't like to make judgments, but I can almost guarantee a lot of them have not seen Dusk Till Dawn. I'm wondering the feeling that we had about I've seen this before, that other people maybe didn't have the same one.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, if you don't have the history of not seeing enough movies we've between the four of us, we've seen, I think, again, the industry term metric shit ton of horror movies. So we have a lot to base it off of. And yeah, someone from younger generations, unless they're a voracious horror fan, has probably got, some blind spots. So they're going to have a very different reaction than those of us that have.
You saw this one in the theater, right?
I did, yeah. I really liked it. I'm a sucker for a well-done period piece. Coogler kind of had me in from the get-go. I knew that the vampires were coming at some point, but it sets you up obviously that the opening scene with the boy showing up at the church, something really bad has happened. And that framing device was okay. I'm as the movie went on, I'm I understand why he did that, because he's holding the vampires back for so long. You got to give people something to kind of be all right, when's it coming? But yeah, the whole story about the brothers and just trying to get by, opening up their juke joint in the deep South, Jim Crow, bunch of white crackers just making life miserable for them, and how they kind of just battle back against it.
The redeeming part of the movie for me was that final battle where he just mows down all the racists. It was so
yeah. I mean, that was great. I mean, obviously the scene that caught me, and I think caught a lot of people, was just that one. It wasn't a single, I'm sure it was not a single take, but it felt like a single take where the camera moves throughout the juke joint as everyone's getting into the music, and you get that history of music where, all of a sudden Jimi Hendrix shows up, and it's just he's kind of giving you that thread. And, it's a little bit of if you're not well versed in this type of Black Southern music, it's a bit of a history lesson. And those of it that are familiar are just kind of oh, that's really cool. He's including so and so and so here. So that to me just kind of captured it. So for me, the vampire part is almost like an afterthought. I feel like it gets a really well-made movie and an interesting story, and it just happens to have vampires in it. So it spans a couple of different genres. So I don't necessarily view it as a horror movie. It's just it's just a really unique, interesting tale that's got some horror element to it.
There was a interview that I'm going to attribute the quote to Mick Garris. 99% sure it was him. He's to have a successful horror movie, you have to first start with a successful drama. And I thought that was really enlightening, because if you really care about Jamie Strode and Halloween, you've got to care about her. You've got to care about her two high school friends that you just believe these girls have been in high school forever. And we're just getting this little snapshot with the camera rolling by them. That's where I appreciate this. This is good drama. And then I felt a little betrayed when it turned at the 54th minute into a vampire film, because they were giving me such a good drama with these two brothers and their obvious issues. wait, I think they were in World War I or World War II, or they were in a war and they have a Tommy gun and they worked for Al Capone in Chicago. There's all this lore that they're building. No. Go back to that movie. I want to see that movie. Maybe that's where the thing we've all mentioned. We've seen From Dusk Till Dawn. So we've seen this plot device before. So for someone who hasn't seen it, I can see how they were probably rewarded with a twist that for them was probably amazing because they've never seen it before. We've seen it, but because we weren't given anything new in the vampire lore, give me something more. Either expand the vampire lore, give me something. The Native American vampire bounty hunters. And I'm probably going to be like the 2 millionth person that will have said this if you check out every social media platform. What happened to them? I wanted to see more about them.
Yeah.
And so many people have said, let's make a spin-off of that. I would co-sign on that. Make a movie about that group because they seem like...
that was one of my major grievances. I think I texted that to Pete, while I was still watching it.
They've been doing this for a while. This is a group that is good at what they do. They've been doing it for a while. This is not their first vampire rodeo. And in some ways, that would have been an interesting group to kind of follow.
That would be super interesting. I think I read at the time after Graham and I were texting about it that Ryan Coogler said that there's a story there. And I don't know if it was something that he had planned on filming or was filmed and not used, or was keeping it for it maybe a potential sequel or maybe a potential in-universe movie. I can't remember. I want to say that he did address that. I feel like if Ryan Coogler doesn't want to do it, give that to Sterling Harjo, who did Reservation Dogs, and if there's anyone that's going to take that baton and take that story, pass it off to him.
Maybe the reason why we all like that is because that was one of the things that we'd never seen. All the vampire stuff we'd already seen. There was nothing necessarily original there, but Native American vampire hunters is cool.
Evening, ma'am. We're in pursuit of someone. Very dangerous. He might have come onto your property. Have you seen anyone recently?
No. Bert!
Is he in there with you, ma'am? He's not what he seems. God forbid you let him into your home. And if so, we need to act now.
All right, so next original horror film that we want to talk about, Weapons.
Mr. Graff, I can understand your passion, and I don't mind having these conversations with you because, God forbid, if it was my child, I'd be demanding answers too. Those kids walked out of those homes. No one pulled them out. No one forced them. See that I don't.
Directed by Zach Cregger, a very taboo topic about not just one kid disappearing, which is, tragedy enough, but a whole classroom of kids disappearing and the mystery behind it.
If you're going to harm a kid, it's just a different level movie. There's scenes where Michael Myers, he'll walk by a kid. Jason leaves all the kids alone in part 6. So they're just not willing to go there. And, Pet Sematary isn't ultimately a scary movie, but damn, when Gage gets run over by the semi, that wrecked me. It wrecked me as a kid. I can't even think about it as a parent today. Mysterious and unnerving plot to Weapons. I don't want to spoil it for you because it's a fun movie, and I want to emphasize fun because what it does well, it knows what it is, and it toes that line between black humor and grotesque horror. My wife and I actually got away from the kids and went on a date night, and we saw it opening weekend. Theater was packed, which just made me happy as a horror fan. And then the last 5 minutes of the movie, the whole theater is hysterically laughing. So that also was really important to me because it meant the audience got it. I got it, but I was worried, some people would be like, what the fuck is going on? So awesome movie to see in the theater, totally delivered, and it was shot and told non-linearly, and from different perspectives, which is really cool.
What Christopher Nolan did with Dunkirk, where you're kind of moving back and forth in time, and then he kind of like takes the strings and ties them all tight together at the end. But what Weapons does, in addition to that, is like, as Graham alluded to, it's not just taking different scenes and doing it out of order. It's also taking different perspectives of those characters that it kind of focuses on, which makes it really interesting because you're kind of getting the same action and parts of the same scene, but from that different perspective. So as the movie progresses, you're very slowly, your aperture widens to be like, what the hell's going on? Because John, I'll let John, you jump in on this, but my initial thought when I was in the theater watching it was, I have no idea where this is going, and I'm kind of loving it because it's so unique. Like the story of, I have no idea what's going to happen. It's not following any traditional beats. Again, those of us that have watched so much horror, and we've talked about, the four of us have talked about this collectively and separately, trying to find something out there that's going to grab us. It's like, this is good and this is original and you've got my attention, and Weapons did that from the jump for me.
Weapons is structured in such a way that each character's perspective adds something to the overall mystery that is kind of unraveling. Was that the plan from the start for you?
I didn't have a plan. So no, but I like to just kind of write and not know anything. So I start and then I have no idea where it's going to go, and I try and just turn my brain off and let the story tell me what it wants to be. But at about the midway point, you kind of start to have ideas. You can't help it. And so yes, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like midway through, I knew, I was like, I want to do it in these different, subjective stories, and each story needs to advance the central plot. So I knew from the cold open that I was like, I got a teacher.
Yeah.
That's a great way in. So I knew I was going to start with her. And then I got an angry parent. That's great. So I knew that was going to be, on the menu. And then I was like, I want a cop with a mustache because there's something about Magnolia and John C. Reilly. And I was just like, I want to put that character in this movie. I don't know why, but that belongs. So I knew I was going to get to that third. And then I was like, a junkie, that feels like a good counterbalance to the cop. And so I kind of could smell that these other people were going to be coming along.
And while the movie in parts is creepy and in other parts may not be as scary to some, it's kind of like comedy, different things scare or entertain people. There's definitely some creepy, well-made scenes. You don't know where things are coming from. When you get to the final act of movies and you see the creature, the monster, the whatever it is, a lot of movies lose you because once you see it on screen, you digest it and then you're not as scared anymore. But this movie does something different once that occurs, and it does it so well. And like Graham said, there are movies that know what they are. And if you try to avoid that, it really is obvious. But if you embrace it, it's also obvious, and it's super entertaining when that's done really well.
I think they call these like black box mystery movies, but to be good, it's got to stick the landing, because you can only keep the secret away from the audience for so long before the audience says, you got to tell me what's going on. And it has to be good because you've purposely kept me in the dark. But it seems like the audience that you were with, Graham, felt like relief or something, because why would you laugh after you just saw 17 kids disappear?
So full throttle, batshit crazy that you would have to laugh.
You can't imagine what you're seeing happening, and it's nothing that's like, because we'd have to go too much into the backstory, which I don't want to do. I think the broad strokes we're talking about here are good. I guess the best way I can say is that he just, Zach Cregger just lets fly. There's relief, I guess, on some point, because there are a bunch of scenes that are just flat out like really disturbing in like a really masterful, creepy way. I'm thinking specifically of the scene where Julia Garner's character, who's the teacher, who has her entire class, save for one boy, disappear. And she gets ostracized by the town, who thinks that she was behind it. Quick side note, one of the things that I thought when I was in it, I'm like, oh, this movie is going to be centered around her. And so once it opens up and you realize that it's like, oh, it's her, but then it focuses on Josh Brolin's character, and then Alden Ehrenreich is like a deputy with the police force, and you focus on him for a while. Like, I'm like, oh, this is not at all what I was expecting. But there's that one scene where she's parked out in front of the boy's home, and she's already been kind of snooping around a little bit, and she's like, what's going on here? What's happening? And I think she falls asleep in her car, and you see someone come out the front door
Oh,
and
incredible.
then the camera is on her in the driver's seat sleeping, and then all of a sudden you hear like the back seat door open, and then you hear like the weight of someone getting in the car. That whole scene is so masterfully done. Like you felt everyone's breath holding of like, what is about to happen here? And there's scenes like that you're kind of primed. So when it gets to that batshit ending, there's just like that catharsis of like, oh my God, this is just absolutely crazy what's going on right now.
And for Zach Cregger to go from Barbarian to this, it's,
Oh, man.
like, he's a master of misdirection.
Do you think because Zach Cregger has a background in sketch comedy, because I do think that something about people who are musicians or are comedians usually are really good at understanding like human behavior. And that's why Barbarian does such a good job of setting up, again, a good drama, good characters you like. But I think there's also something very challenging about sketch comedy. And I'm wondering if that's what we're kind of seeing in Barbarian and obviously Weapons. Someone who's like clocked a lot of miles, and now we're seeing that it just happens to be that he picked horror.
I happen to be really fortunate in that like my creative tuning fork tends to just really resonate the strongest with horror. This is my natural sweet spot, so I'm lucky in that way. But like, God forbid, my natural sweet spot was a romantic comedy or like a zany comedy. I think I'd be in a bit more trouble, or I'd have to find other avenues.
Yeah, I did not know that about the sketch comedy, but now it makes sense because of the way he does blend the humor. And, you know, he's kind of 2 for 2 on those batshit reveals. This guy can keep making movies considering what he's done.
Yeah, you read my mind, Bernie, because I was thinking the same thing. And I think your mileage may vary on how much you enjoy or don't enjoy the new Halloween series. Again, like hiring someone like Danny McBride as one of the screenwriters, there definitely seems to be a trend in getting, or maybe the trend is not necessarily in hiring, but the trend is with people that were involved in comedy that know how to build a joke and know what it takes to kind of, you know, there's a meticulous to that craft to kind of do that with whether you're building tension or whether you're building, you know, a payoff to a punchline or to a joke. The structure it seems to be fairly similar. So there's way to kind of pull from each, and maybe that's why, you know, people that are involved in sketch comedy or in comedy in general are maybe more inclined to be able to do some funky stuff with the latest horror.
Well, Sam Raimi always said he loved the Three Stooges, and look at the way he blends it in Evil Dead 2.
For the past 2 years, a masked maniac known as the Hard-Eyes Killer has stalked,
hunted,
and brutally slain couples on Valentine's Day.
With no motive yet uncovered.
This is more than just murder. He's like Cupid with a kink.
We're being chased by a fucking serial killer.
Next up on the list in the original horror category for 2025, Hard Eyes is certainly in the vein of like 80s slasher films, Friday the 13th, Halloween. And that what was interesting about Hard Eyes is that it seemed to be aware of the genre. We saw that obviously Scream, Wes Craven, Kevin Williamson. When you know the rules, you can break them. And if you have really good people behind the camera, in front of the camera, and you do a good job, it can be pretty amazing. I'm not going to say Hard Eyes is in the category of Scream, but for a movie that was just supposed to be a Valentine's Day themed slasher, it actually gave me a little bit more than I expected.
I threw it on once it hit Netflix, and I think I texted these two immediately. I was like, the opening scene I just watched is one of the best on-screen horror deaths I've ever seen. It was so fun because it is shot and feels with the tone of a rom-com. And a good rom-com, I mean, When Harry Met Sally is the go of rom-coms, phenomenal movie, but they've been done to death. And this mocks the complete garbage ones, but throws in bloody, grotesque kills. And it keeps with that tone of rom-coms, but it's a horror movie. And it exceeded expectations and was complete fun.
Well, I'll throw in the hot take. I think this is actually better than Scream. Never been a huge fan of the Scream franchise, so
I hate Scream as well.
Whoa.
But that being said, so kind of fall between John and Graham in that I really enjoyed it. I saw it in the theater, and I can't remember what got me to see it in the theater because, like you, Graham, when I was watching the trailers, I was kind of like, okay, I'm like, this seems like a bit like and I Know What You Did Last Summer retread that they're trying to just be like, oh, well, we'll just throw one out, see how this does, probably made on the cheap. And I was pleasantly surprised. This is going to be maybe a little counterintuitive, but I think the biggest problem I had with it was that it was a little too glossy for my liking. But I understand that that's entirely because they're riffing on a rom-com, so it needed to be. So,
right. But I think I would have been lost had they shifted the tone to a true slasher, I Know What You Did Last Summer style, but it was a nice surprise because almost like by default, were they deceptive with the trailer? Because, had they done it differently, I probably would have been all in just seeing the trailer, but really I knew nothing of this mashup of genres and how well done it was, and I didn't really hear any word of mouth on it, so it's kind of my pleasant surprise of horror movies for 2025.
They sold it as kind of a February throwaway horror movie, the kind of movie that you're like, well, you're not releasing this in October, so the studio must not feel very good about this, so you're going to...
Right, because that's the dead month, right?
Absolutely. That's what
it seemed like it was marketed just to be like, okay, well, we can do a horror, but we can make it kind of a rom-com. We'll release it around Valentine's Day, and it seemed like it was like something that was like four-corner marketed to be like, and let's try to make a quick buck.
Yes. To make the stupid rom-com like you were talking about, Graham, you do have to be aware of its stupidity. And, there's so many countless Hallmark films that come out around Christmas, around Valentine's Day, and we can all kind of figure out the plot points as you're watching them. Oh, this is the point where they're going to argue. That's plot point 3. But before the end of the movie, they're going to come back together. And like you were saying, Graham, the cute little headbutts, all this stuff, it's cheesy, but it's white noise. It's elevator music. It's the stuff that you fold laundry to. It's the same reason why people watch the Law and Orders, and they've been on for so many years, because it's a procedural. You don't actually have to fully pay attention because you kind of know how it's going to end. I think that's what we all expected from Hard Eyes. I know what a slasher looks like, even though I'll bet Pete 100% agree. It's a little bit glossy and you introduce all of the rom-com tropes, but they still kept the goriness. That's that one thing I'll say too about the movie is that it had a lot of inertia. It kept moving. It never really slowed down. And I think that was to its benefit and set up the sequel that we all know will happen when Hard Eyes 2 comes out on Valentine's Day a few years from now.